Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a final hot take, final video of the evening. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books, Wokeistan, a novel, and Hollywoke, another novel. Links in the description along with the Pineys, comedy horror in South Jersey. Check them out at Amazon. Kindle Unlimited is free. You can also get the trade paperback books. Also, we're on Rumble and BitChute. Yes, and they're both growing. And Joan is very sleepy. Very sleepy. I dragged her out here just to be in the videos, and I kind of feel bad. But you haven't seen little Joan a lot, so this is little sleepy Joan. She had a big day. A big day, little doggy had. So let's get into the remaining news stories. Facebook, according to Vox, this is Vox, by the way, a site I almost never go to. Facebook is building tech to read your mind. The ethical implications are staggering. Oh, right. That's just what I think of. When I think of ethics, I think, ooh, let me see what Vox says, the extremely left-wing Vox. But this is a real thing. I mean, Elon Musk has been working on this, if I'm not mistaken, and a few other companies. The last people in the world I want to buy a digital interface to my brain from would be Facebook. Those guys, I think they like to take people's data. Seems to be the pattern. I don't see why Zuckerberg wouldn't go a lot further. Our brains are perhaps the final privacy frontier. Oh, really, left-wing Vox? No doubt you'll want the government to regulate that so they could read our minds. Yeah, that's a bad idea all around. Do not get the government involved. And I would say don't get Facebook involved. So I hope Elon has the breakthrough first. And maybe it'll be shareware. I don't know. Remember this guy? He testified in the impeachment. Trump kicked him out of his job. He worked in the White House. And Lieutenant Colonel Vindman unveils plan to silence right-wing media. Because this guy is pure blue anon. He believes the January 6th thing was a major, major historical event, and that right-wingers were brought there by misinformation, and only the lefties can cure it all. Right. Yeah, this guy, fortunately, I don't see a whole lot of support for him, but you never know. This is the Biden administration. All the lefties have been pulled in. At some point, the pushback is going to be massive. I mean, it's already starting to happen. Even the Republicans are standing up to some extent to Biden and his policies. Things just cannot sustain themselves. The left is starting to tear themselves apart. But with the big news about the Georgia shooter, I guess it was today, that's not good. Democrats are likely to attempt to pass some sort of gun control legislation or hate crime legislation over this, which is a bit ironic considering that people on the radical left were trying to group Asians into the same category as whiteness, that Asians were privileged and therefore they had to get, I don't know, pushed around as well. It's a little ridiculous how obsessed these guys are with race. But the last thing we need is these ridiculously race-obsessed people creating hate crime speech or hate crime laws, because that will essentially regulate speech, and it'll just deteriorate from there. You won't be able to say anything. And it'll open the door for these Twitterati, these Twidiots, to complain about everything you post and say, which is probably why you ought to get off Twitter. I think it's on borrowed time at this point, but we'll see. More pastors bow to the LGBT crowd, and it'll only get worse, according to WND. you know, they got to be open to a lot of different people. I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. And it's a bit of a karma because back in the 80s and 90s, they were very hostile to the LGBT community. That being said, the response from the LGBT community, particularly the militant end of it, has been a little over the top. And they've gone, they keep going too far. There was a time when the LGBT community went through a lot of trouble to garner dignity and respect, and that was part of the movement. Just as Martin Luther King Jr. and the Selma civil rights movement, they were all properly dressed and very dignified. The LGBTQ community in the beginning was a lot like that. It modeled itself close to the civil rights movement to some extent. Now, it wasn't all like that. It wasn't exactly like that, but to some extent. Now it just seems like a lot of people in the LGBT community are just demanding, hey, we're gonna dress as crazy as possible, act as crazy as possible, and you have to accept us anyway. There's a line there, like, I don't want to see people discriminated against in the LGBT community, but I also don't want to see all the craziness. I watched some videos about the gay pride parades in other countries. They're a much more dignified affair. You had families came out because it wasn't a parade of sexual fetishes. It was a march about pride. And the LGBT community would come out and they'd march. And it was families could come to this thing. Every year I see the parade in San Francisco, and it's too much. It's just too much. Like, I wouldn't go out to that. I'd want to be supportive of my friends in that community, but I don't want to go to some weird parade where people are like dressed up in gimp outfits. That's not me. I don't want to be involved in that. That to me is a different thing from the LGBT community. Just my opinion. Democrats call for the resurrection of the long dead ERA. I guess good luck with that. The whole feminist movement has been hijacked by intersectionality, and again, it's gone too far. I think this is a serious problem on the left now. Everything has no limits. Nothing has any limits, and they keep crossing these lines. They keep getting into trouble and having to pull back, and it's like they won't just say, okay, this is as far as we go. They won't say that, and this is what's going to eventually bring them crumbling down, because at some point everyone will just walk away from you look at, for instance, Me Too. Me Too movement started out as a thing that needed to happen, and the next thing you know, you've got corruption within the movement. You're attacking people who, in my view, really didn't deserve to be attacked or even called out. It's like these groups get a little bit of power and it immediately goes to their head, and they immediately start overstretching. Let's just overstretch. The Minnesota riots had this group. They were bailing people out of jail. And this is something that was common in protest groups. And now the Minnesota riots were not protests, but that being said, I understood why Black Lives Matter would bail out their own. But the organization in Minnesota didn't just bail out their own. They bailed out everybody. Literally criminals. They just bailed them all out without any regard for what they were charged with or anything. There was, again, no limits. Celebrities and famous people, and Kamala Harris urged people to donate, and it's nuts. Everybody got out of jail because they don't believe in bail. Okay, well then what do you believe in? How are you going to run society if you're not going to have bail, if you're not going to have cops? There's never any concrete answers. It's just like, well, we'll figure that out later. Or we have a plan, but it's never been tried, but we're sure it's going to work. I mean, the plan to completely abolish the police is just insane, because they're going to naturally be replaced by something just like it. And it's going to be worse because now you're starting from the ground up. Yes, the police have a lot of problems, but some of those problems have been fixed. Some of them. Not all of them. Some of them. Starting with a new group, you're going to have to reinvent the wheel and have all those problems again. Oh, that's why we need police reports. That's why we need accountability. That's why, those other cops had this and that. Why reinvent the wheel? Just start from where you're going. And again, it's like, I'm not like super cop guy who needs to help the police at every turn, but the problems are nuanced to a large extent, so you got to get into it. Thruples, love is love, right? No, I don't think so. Look, if you want to have a three-way, that's your business. I almost had one. But I don't think it's a relationship. I think you're kidding yourself if you call that a relationship. I mean, even if you have it for a while, which I'm sure is fun, it's not a relationship. I don't believe in this polyamory stuff. I don't believe in this throuple stuff. But, to each its own. I don't know what people in that lifestyle expect from the rest of us. Quite frankly, I think if marriage wasn't regulated by the state, you would have had these problems fixed a long time ago. But, do what you want, but don't demand from everybody else our attention or money or whatever. Just go do you or to other people, and just leave us out of it. We don't need to see that. There's another thing with the left. Can you not keep anything private? Can you just keep it to yourself? Why does everybody have to know your business? Why do you have to know everybody else's business? Can people not have some amount of privacy in their life? Continuing. Poll. Majority support fencing around the U.S. Capitol. Maybe. This is from Breitbart. I don't know if I believe that poll. I guess they probably say now because of the constant news reports about, the insurrection or whatever. But I think in the light of day, most people aren't going to support that. Especially once you go there and then try to get in, and the security measures are ridiculous. I think give it some time. There's a lot of stories about that shooting. Man, it's just terrible. Oh, here's a good news story. DeSantis, he slammed critical race theory. Says Florida schools will exclude unsubstantiated theories from curriculum. Good for you, DeSantis. Every day he says something more and more that I'm like, run this guy for President Trump if you don't run. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders at least. Judge inclined to review some Georgia things, which I can't talk about on YouTube. But it was connected to a certain election, Hong Kong, wink, wink. So maybe get to Gab Trends and read that for yourself. It's on WND. Demi Lovato is in the news again. Says she was sexually assaulted by her drug dealer the night she overdosed. Some celebrities, they just keep coming out with stories about themselves, and I don't know if I believe them. Maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. I think some of them just want attention, and they're willing to say almost anything. And I think there's if she is making it up, there's probably a kernel of truth in the story, and she's exaggerating, which I think is what a lot of people do, because that way their story will stand up to scrutiny up to a point. But I don't know why this is news, Fox News. Another one of these stories. Meghan Markle networking with Democrats on potential bid for U.S. presidency. That would probably be the ultimate Democrat candidate. Meghan Markle, a woman with zero experience, but she's a person of color, and she's a woman, and she's been oppressed, but she's obscenely rich. I mean, it would be the ultimate hypocritical candidate. Yeah, sure, put her up. I'd love to see her run. I'd love to see her run and get absolutely trashed, because I think even the hardcore left would be like, no way can we can't even vote for her against Trump. MSNBC's Joy Reid, Republicans are now the Dixiecrat Party. Well, that's weird, because the Dixiecrat Party was the Democrat Party for many years. The Republicans freed the slaves, and because they did, the South, at that post-war South, they were forced into having Republican governors and mayors and government for a long time. But then the reaction to that was the Democrats came back, and the Democrats in the South were the super racist kind. And in fact, the KKK was a political party in the 20s and had tons of members. They had representatives in Congress, and they would caucus with the Democrats, because the Democrats in the South were pretty damn racist. It's funny, because it seems like everybody on the left wants, we got to deal with historical racism. It's funny that Democrats haven't dealt with their historical racism. When are they going to come out and talk about all the racist things they did with segregation and Jim Crow and everything post-Civil War? Not really hearing much about that. Court, state official violated law with ballot counting instructions. That's in Michigan. I'm just reading what the headline is, YouTube. WND, it was still the most secure election ever. Honk, honk, wink, wink. Candace Owens, 100% suing Cardi B over fake tweet claiming Owens' husband cheated on her. Ooh, that's personal. You shouldn't do that. And I don't know why you would create a fake tweet and try to pass it off as someone else's, especially if you're Cardi B. Don't you have anything better to do? That is weird. If that's true. Mom approves 8-year-old social media star dating 13-year-old boy. Wow. That seems a little extreme. Yeah, she seems too young for that. Too young for dating. 13-year-old boy. It's a little old for 8. That's a little beyond just, if it's 2 8-year-olds, they're just going to hold hands and walk around, and maybe they go get ice cream. I mean, I guess if they're chaperoned the whole time, maybe. Seems a little extreme. It's from WND. Michigan man, 21, threatened Biden, Pelosi, and Whitmer, authorities said. They come out of the woodwork. Especially during times of stress. Daily Mail and Zero Hedge. I don't read the headlines from InfoWars. I don't really trust them, unless it's Paul Joseph Watson. Then I'll check it out. Let's see. Again, it's all about the massage parlor shooting spree. It's terrible. Orphan 13, who has lived in the UK since he was 3, faces deportation to Georgia. That's very strange. I'm surprised the UK would deport someone at all, because they don't seem to deport anybody. They seem to have like tons and tons of immigrants. Why are they picking on this kid? Seems weird. Study shows very few of the Capitol Hill rioters were QAnon red staters with ties to right-wing groups. Yeah, I can believe that because it just seemed like a lot of them just wandered in. Not all of them. Some of them did some damage, and they should be, at the very least, fined. But a lot of them just seemed to be like, oh, what's going on? They marched to the Capitol, and then they kind of just got lost and ended up wandering into the Capitol. And when some of the cops, and I've seen the videos, took away the barricades, I mean, that seemed to be a signal, hey, come on in. But personally, I would have stayed out of there. I almost went, but had to work. Finally, Brussels prepares to introduce vaccine passports to save European tourism industry. I don't know if that's going to work. It's a European Union. They're very, very much, very bureaucratic. This is bad. Tesla on autopilot plows into Michigan state troopers' patrol car. Ouch. Eesh. I wonder what that did to the Tesla stock. And finally, argument over stimulus checks leads to quadruple murder. Oh my God. That sounds horrible. A lot of horrible news tonight. Let's click on this one. Indianapolis man killed 3 adults and a child following an argument over dividing a stimulus check, according to the probable cause affidavit. Jesus, dude. The police responded to a woman shot on Saturday night. She told the officers there were more victims. In another residence, officers found 3 adults and a child shot to death. 7-year-old, 23, and 35, and 44-year-old. Holy cow. Jeez. I guess this is the guy. Yeah, looks like it's him. That's or the suspect, I should say. There was an argument that escalated to the point where he pulled out his weapon and started shooting everyone in the home. He wanted some of the some of the stimulus money. Jeez, what a terrible thing to do over anything, really. But I mean, over a stimulus check, over free money. That's even worse. I mean, really, stimulus check is just a bad idea. It's just a terrible idea because we're essentially borrowing like $5,000 for each person to give them all $1,400, and I don't know if the plan is to do the Great Reset by tanking the U.S. dollar, but this is certainly pushing us in that direction. And the economic illiterates who run the Democratic Party just won't learn. They just won't learn. At the end of the day, they'll blame everything on the Republicans and Trump and, other things. They never take responsibility. If giving out money worked, if the minimum wage worked, if welfare worked, don't you think there would be no more poor people? Or at least an improvement? It just keeps getting worse. Every year it gets worse and worse and worse. In that area. So it's not a solution. It feels good to do it. And it's certainly good for politicians to do it because they could say, I give everybody a check. But Biden didn't even do that. He lied. He said he was going to give everybody $2,000. And then he backpedaled and said, well, you already got $600. So that Biden didn't give you the $600. So it's not his, it's not his money anyway. I think, to some extent, Biden is just another guilty liberal trying to assuage his various, crimes in his own head, things he's done over the years that didn't work or didn't help, and he's trying to make up for it. He's like his crime bill that put so many people in jail. He thinks he's being a good guy now by giving out all this money. He's not. And he's still lining his own pockets. Like, it'd be different if he stopped doing that. You know, if he hadn't taken these fat stacks from China through his son and just, I really believe this. But, it's the same old in Washington, D.C., unfortunately. That's it for me. Time to hit the hay, make some comics, and then hit the hay. So I'll see you tomorrow with Little Joan. Be safe out there. And, yeah.